Welcome to Ask the Expert with noted radio host Steve Sleeper. Each week, Steve interviews entrepreneurs and professionals and shares their intriguing stories of success and service. Now, here's radio veteran Steve Sleeper.
And our guest today on Ask the Expert is Jason Brown with the JTB Law Group in Jersey City. Good day to you, Jason.
Good day to you, Steve.
Hey, tell me a little bit about your firm and yourself.
Well, our firm, the JTB Law Group, we fight for people's rights nationwide. We represent people in a variety of ways. One, people that have suffered serious or catastrophic injuries. Two, workers' rights. And three, mass torts. I have a background in which I've had the honor and privilege of serving the country as a special agent and legal advisor with the FBI. And then I was a partner in a firm in Manhattan. And now our current firm is a mid-sized firm in Jersey City, and we work with really a great group of people that genuinely care for people and clients, and we work hard to get results, and fortunately we've gotten a lot of great results.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, FBI, the FBI background, can you tell me a little more about that?
Well, yes and no. During my tenure at the Bureau, I worked probably some of the most highest profile investigations of that era, including the Daniel Pearl kidnapping, the 9/11 investigation, and anthrax. My hero growing up was actually Lieutenant Columbo. He had a great show, and like him, I always aspire to go against some of the most sophisticated criminals in the world and defeat them. And I did that with the Bureau, and I try to translate that skill set into what I'm doing here in the civil law context.
Now, one of the things you mentioned was mass tort. What is that?
A mass tort is when multiple people are injured in the same manner or by the same sort of environmental exposure. They generally break into a couple different categories, one of which is an environmental mass tort, where you see people like the drinking water in Detroit, where something can be a toxic type of substance. There can be a workplace mass tort where, for example, the NFL, all the players were getting concussions, or sometimes railroad workers would go deaf after years at working at the railroad. And the one we focus more on is products liability, such as where certain cars, like the airbags were defective and people unfortunately had to pass away because the airbags didn't deploy. And there's really a subsection of the products liability, which is pharmaceutical litigation. And pharmaceuticals are products, of course, but they can be almost any everyday type of products that you wouldn't even think would be unsafe, but it could be such as bad birth control, like Yasmin or Ocella, which allegedly has been linked to an increased risk of clots in young women, or any women for that matter.
Okay, pharmaceutical mass torts. Now, doesn't the FDA approve the products? Shouldn't they have been vetted before?
It's interesting. The FDA does look at the products, but they look at the products kind of like a grand jury looks at an investigation, which is they only hear one side of it, and they don't hear the other side. So they're getting presented with information from the drug company and the drug company alone. And the FDA even admits when they file things with the courts that they're understaffed, that they don't have the resources to properly vet what the drug companies are telling them. So if the drug companies are giving them information that's, quite frankly, wrong or false or distorted, the FDA may ask questions, but they don't have the resources to catch that. And also, people probably, if they looked into it, it's fascinating. The FDA doesn't really have a robust conflict of interest provision. So individuals that work for the FDA that are involved intimately in approving certain products can then go on to work for the drug company that products they approved, which seems a little bit incestuous.
Yeah, it does. Now, you talked a little bit about the types of mass torts. Is there anything you can add to that, as far as what types are out there?
There's all sorts of cases that are out there. Right now, you see the bad water all over the country, like in Michigan. Right now, from the pharmaceutical perspective, there's a couple that we really have our eye on. There's a product called Xarelto, which is a blood thinner. It's like Pradaxa, where in the Pradaxa case, they put this product into people's bodies without even having an antidote for it. So they couldn't stop bleeding, and people will have bleeding events that are uncontrollable. Another one that I mentioned earlier is the birth control litigation like Yasmin, Ocella, Gianvi. These are products containing a fourth-generation hormone known as drospirenone, and this product has been linked to over a 2 times risk of blood clot events like deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolisms, strokes, and death compared to earlier generations. Now, it's ironic, we talked a little bit earlier about the FDA, that even though this is more dangerous than earlier generations, this product is still available for consumer use, and almost every day we get a call from somebody who's had a bad experience with one of these products. What we're heavily investigating right now is talcum powder, and it's linked to ovarian cancer. And, I mean, this is something that's been recently in the news. There's been 2 verdicts this year, one for $72 million and one for $55 million, where it's been alleged and the jury believed that Johnson & Johnson has hid the risks about this baby powder being used in the genital area for prolonged periods of time, and how the jury believed that Johnson & Johnson knew that this causes ovarian cancer. And some of the pathology reports, according to the testimony, were directly linked where you could see traces of long-term talc use in the cancer.
Wow. Yeah, and I did see that in the news. Now, let's back up to pharmaceuticals. It sounds like some of these have been out there for a while, and I'm guessing there's generic versions. Now, what if a person took a generic version of the product? What happens there?
Well, this is something that I editorialize about quite a bit because it's entirely unfair in the law. And it's a catch-22 that I'd like to flush out, where, oftentimes you go into a pharmacy without you even asking, they're going to switch to the cheaper generic. And if, unfortunately, you get injured by a generic product, you cannot sue the generic manufacturer, generally, because they're not the ones who came up with the formula for the product, and you can't sue the person that came up with the product because they're not putting out the generic. So the way the law stands right now, until Congress corrects it, is you cannot hold anybody accountable if you get injured by a generic product.
Oh, wow. Okay. What should we look for in a mass tort law firm?
Well, just like any other law firm, I think there's certain things you have to look for. And I think you need to look for somebody that's been through the process before, particularly from start to finish. The best indicator of the future is generally the past. So if somebody's done it all and accomplished it all, that's a good indicator that they'll probably be able to do it again, although there's no guarantees in life. Mm-hmm. And I think with any law firm or any industry, you want to make sure you have somebody on the phone that you can have access to, who returns your call promptly, who answers your question and is upfront, that they don't give you false promises, but they tell you things like the way they are. They can maybe try to predict what certain likely outcomes are, but there's never any guarantees.
Okay. What's the cost?
Well, the consumer should generally know that, fortunately, anybody who has a case, generally the lawyers that handle this area of law and mass tort do not charge up front, and they're only compensated if they win the case, and that's similar to our firm as well. Mass torts are very expensive to litigate because you're going against some of the biggest companies in the world, and generally they do require a coalition of firms. It's rare for just one firm to take a one-off case because the expenses to litigate can be quite costly. Generally, it's called mass tort because there's a mass of plaintiffs that aggregate, and then if there's thousands of plaintiffs, then instead of one individual case in which the cost may be $1 million to prosecute, the global costs sometimes can be shared amongst all the plaintiffs, making it more feasible to litigate. But those global costs, the plaintiffs don't have to pay. The law firms absorb those costs, and if the law firms lose the case, the client is not responsible for any of that money.
Okay. Anything else I should know about mass tort?
Yes, absolutely. There's a couple more things. Thanks for asking. First of all, our firm is ready to believe you. If someone's been injured by a product, it's definitely worth the time to make the call, take a free consultation, and run it by a lawyer to see if other people have had that type of experience. I mean, even if they think that the case, or even if somebody thinks it's really old, hey, I got injured by Yasmin, 10 years ago, and I had a pulmonary embolism, and thinks, well, that's too old. It may not be the case, because there's certain laws called statutes of repose and discovery rule where you still might be able to bring the case in certain courts. And I'm talking about things from a legal perspective, and I also want to emphasize if somebody's taking a product and it has any health concerns, they should, of course, run it by their doctor, have a candid discussion with the doctor about the health problems that they're encountering or their health concerns, and see if the product they're on, if the reward or the utility of the product outweighs its possible risks.
Okay. How do we reach you, Jason?
We have a couple phone numbers, one of which is pretty easy, is 877-561-0000, and that's a toll-free number. My direct email is jtb@jtblawgroup.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions and or emails that are directly sent my way. Our website, we have multiple, but our primary website is ifightforyourrights.com, and that's primarily what we do. It's what gets me up in the morning. It's what gets me energized. We look to fight for people's rights, and we represent the individuals against these big companies that harm individuals.
And I believe you do that on a federal level. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, we do it nationwide. Generally, we're in federal courts, although we do go into state courts from time to time. So we're licensed in various jurisdictions. Some of these mass torts, you don't need to be licensed everywhere to take plaintiffs from everywhere. But other cases, we sometimes affiliate with local counsel to get into those courts to, vindicate individuals' rights.
Okay, I understand now. All righty. Our guest today on Ask the Expert has been Jason Brown with the JTB Law Group in Jersey City. Jason, this has been very revealing. I learned a lot of stuff here. But thanks for being our guest today.
Well, Steve, thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks for listening to Ask the Expert with Steve Sleeper. Join us next time as entrepreneurs and professionals share their intriguing stories of success and service.